We sobbed. We sob, we cry, we bargain, we sob some more. We ask how, why, how can this be? And then we sob again. And we think these are tears of mourning and grief. They are not. This is not over yet. The tears of mourning and grief will come. Today we sob because we are in utter shock and disbelief. The images and videos of the victims that we have seen penetrate our souls unforgettably, of regular people, mothers, teenagers, babies, and the elderly. Those who have been kidnapped are etched in our minds and in our hearts. My Temple family, we are living in unprecedented times, where an ancient kind of barbarism has resurfaced from generations past as an expression of deeply rooted hatred, a kind of hatred we hoped to never see again. This has been the single most horrific attack against the Jewish people since the Holocaust. People are calling it Israel's 9/11. 1,300 innocent lives have been lost, and the number only continues to grow. And for some context and perspective to help us understand the magnitude of this massacre on a per capita basis, it's as if the United States lost 44,000 Americans. That's more than 10 times the lives lost on 9/11. Can we even begin to fathom such a horror? Israel is small. She is so very small, but mighty. But in distance, in some areas, just 11 miles across and about 260 miles north to south, surrounded on all sides by other Muslim countries. And we forget that most Jews were killed or cast out of those Muslim countries where thriving Jewish communities used to exist, like in Iran and Iraq, Lebanon and Turkey. And today, these communities exist no more, and we forget. This war is not about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It is not about land. It is not about politics. It is unequivocally about Jewish hatred. Make no mistake, this is anti-Semitism. Our enemy are not the Palestinians. Our enemy is inhumanity. And let me be clear. I am the first to speak about my challenges and difficulties with Israeli politics. And for those of you who heard my Erev Rosh Hashanah sermon, I did not mince my words about my concerns regarding the current government. However, this attack on Israel was not about politics. Hamas is a terrorist organization that is backed by Iran and has sucked the resources from the Palestinian people's ability to thrive. Hamas is clear in their charter. They will not be satisfied until all Jews are dead. Not Israelis, Jews. Peace with Hamas, who will never acknowledge our existence, is impossible. And the Palestinian people suffer. They suffer for it as well. Hamas has crippled the Palestinian people for their own benefit. Hamas takes funds from the Palestinians, inhibiting them from developing Gaza. And instead, they use this to fund their terrorism. For example, 80% of Palestinians under the age of 40 are unemployed. And about 40% of the general population don't have jobs. Hamas is suffocating Palestinians in the region. A military draft has been called for Israelis to go back and fight this terror organization. The hope was that 70% or 80% of the reservists would show up, but that didn't happen. 150% showed up. Those who were abroad in the United States, Thailand, and other countries around the world came rushing back, leaving everything behind, and were suited in their uniforms within 12 hours of being called. Our Israelis, who compose of Jews, Christians, Christian Arabs, Muslims, Druze, fight alongside each other. The diversity of individuals all fight proudly for Israel. But it's not just the soldiers. A few days ago, Lucy Aharish, who's an Arab Israeli news anchor, released a video to the world in English and Hebrew saying, "We citizens of the state of Israel, all of us, left and right, secular and religious, Jews, Christians, Druze, Muslims, minorities, and immigrants from all over the world stand united together in this fight." When the world looks at Israel, they sometimes make ignorant claims and broad assumptions about the Jewish state. And it inhibits a diverse group of people from all over the world and many faiths living within her borders. No one reports on the wonderful acts and the ability of Palestinians and Israelis to come together. That never seems to make the news ever. Instead, Israel is constantly held to unreasonable standards that we hold no other country to. Countries disguise anti-Semitism to the one Jewish state in the world by imposing ideals that they themselves can't uphold and behave even worse sometimes. But no one says anything. And again, I am not suggesting that the Israeli government does everything right. They don't, far from it. But if we only judge a country by some of their actions and not the actions that bring forth peace to the region and humanitarian support that is constantly given to other countries, then we are painting a false picture. For the last 40 weeks in a row, Israelis of all faiths walked alongside each other protesting the current government. I, too, attended one of those protests this summer, asking for reforms, including for Palestinians, not just for Israeli policy to change. This war is not about policy. It is about instilling fear and terror into the lives of civilians around the world. Kidnapping children, women, pregnant women, and the elderly, and Holocaust survivors. This is not a fight for freedom. And this assault is not just happening in Israel. Just 2 nights ago, I was walking in downtown Cleveland and saw 2 women wearing T-shirts that said, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." And for those of you who are unfamiliar with this slogan, it is a common call to arms for pro-Palestinian activists. It calls for the establishment of the state of Palestine from the Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea, erasing the state of Israel and its people. It is also a rallying cry for terrorist groups and their sympathizers. This slogan is not a call to help Palestinians. It is a call to remove Israel from existing. I'd like to pause for just one moment and personally thank all of you that have reached out to me in the last week with support and love. It has meant so much to me and my family. And thank you to everyone who has asked about my sister who recently visited Cleveland for Sukkot. Unfortunately, she has not yet made it back. She left almost 2 weeks ago. She's still in Newark because she can't get a flight back to Tel Aviv, where her children are in bomb shelters for most of the day. I hope she'll return in the next week or so. I've been in very close contact, like many of you, with so many other Israelis who share difficult and also inspiring stories. My best friend and maid of honor at my wedding, Nita, shared with me that she and her husband, Sharon, have had to become very creative in getting their 7-year-old and their 5-year-old to stay in the bomb shelter. When the sirens, the blaring sirens go off, they all run into the magical room. They have decorated the bomb shelter to make it look a little bit more appealing and beautiful. But Nita's 7-year-old is no sucker. And she's beginning to ask really difficult questions like, why do the sirens go off so loudly? Why is the ground shaking underneath my feet? Why do we have to constantly be in this magical room? It's starting to feel not so magical. These, among many, are the difficult questions Israeli families are left to deal with in addition to the grief. And closer to home, at this time, one of our members, 19-year-old Kylie Moss, daughter of Eric and Leslie Moss, is currently in Israel on a year-long program that has been cut short. Eric and Leslie are with us virtually this evening as they are visiting their other daughter, Sydney, in DC. Kylie and I have been speaking very often in the last few days. In my conversations with her, she's expressed some fear and concern. I told her that we are so proud of her and that coming home is definitely not an act of cowardice, but a reasonable option. And Kylie, for those of you who had the privilege to meet her, a tremendous young woman, really something very special. In her very normal, soft-spoken voice, said to me point blank, "No, Rabbi Dadoun, I'm not coming home. That's what the terrorists want. They want me to be scared, and I am, but I'm not coming home." Her program is on temporary hold, and Kylie has now moved from the program's housing to a friend's house, her friend Ye'ara, who she met on the program. And that's not all. The two of them have decided that staying home and hiding in the bomb shelter isn't really good enough. So each day they get up and go volunteer to help prepare and serve meals for soldiers in a nearby base. Kylie and Ye'ara, I'm pretty sure they're still awake and watching, even though it's 1:30 in the morning. We are very proud of you both. And I promise all of you that when she does return safely, she will be giving a Devar Torah of her own at services. And that's not all. Kylie has also reached out to all of her new friends, including Israeli young people, telling them that when they are in grief or having a hard time, they should call her rabbi. And I honestly feel so blessed that Kylie trusts me in that way, because speaking to those young Israelis has not been easy either. They are really hurting. So what do we do now? Bless you. We cry. We live in this moment of pain and gather with one another and hug each other and build strength. But being in this moment of pain is necessary. For those of you who have already donated to Israeli causes, I urge you to please continue to help in any way that you can with supplies, equipment, humanitarian aid, helping displaced survivors and their families. Please consider giving whatever you are able at this time. And a note, wherever you donate, please make sure it's an official site. Some people have started fake sites and are taking money, so please make sure it's through an official place, a legitimate place. If you don't know where to give in this moment, the JFNA or our Cleveland Federation is making wonderful collections and matching, and those are two great places to start. If any of you are connected to any college campuses that haven't yet spoken up against these atrocities, please do so. Silence is complicity. Our Jewish and Israeli students on campuses are hurting, and they are having to fight this fight by themselves, and it's not easy. We often think that we educate our children about Israel, but what they're expected to do on college campuses is not Israel education, it's Israel advocacy. And that's a very, very big burden for 18 to 22-year-olds to do on their own. There is a difference. When you walked in today, we have several letters to our representatives. And thank you to Phil Robinson, who is here this evening. We are thanking our representatives for supporting Israel and in this difficult time and are speaking out against these atrocities. If you haven't signed this, I invite you to please do so as you leave. For those of you who are joining us virtually, this will be up on our main web page either this evening or tomorrow, for sure by Monday, but everybody will have a chance to sign. Please give it to other people, friends, family, coworkers, whoever you can possibly think of. Sending those thank yous to our officials matters. It really matters. Continue to support the effort to bring home the hostages. We cannot rest until these innocent people are brought home. These women, these children, some of whom are American. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, be Jewish. Be unapologetically, dedicatedly committed to our values, our tradition, our people. Open the flaps of your tents. Invite your friends of all faiths into your home so they know what you stand for, so they know what it means to be Jewish. Bring them to services. Bring them to our temple programs. Have them over for Shabbat dinner. Make challah, light candles. In these difficult times, we need all of our allies and our friends to stand beside us. In Genesis 2:18, which is from this week's Torah portion, it says, "Vayomer Adonai Elohim lo tov hiyot ha'adam levado, e'eseh lo ezer kenegdo." God said, "It is not good for human beings to be alone. I will make a fitting counterpart." We must strengthen one another with our wider community so they know what we stand for, which is peace, living a life based on values, and tikkun olam, repairing of our world. In the coming weeks, we will continue to hear horror stories. But just as Jews have always survived difficult moments in history, we will also hear countless stories of heroism, strength, and fortitude. It is these stories that we cling to that allow us to go on and hope for a brighter future, one that includes peace. Each week we gather for Shabbat and we pray for peace, peace for ourselves, our inner selves, peace for our community, peace for our world. Let this be our wake-up call. In this moment, none of us can stand idly by. We must be rodfei shalom, those who chase and pursue peace and not hope that it works out. Hope is important and it is a driving force. It is not an ending. It is not an action. We start peace with our inner families, our inner circles, having difficult conversations we've perhaps been afraid to do, but just starting to talk about difficult topics, Israel and not Israel related. Sometimes we are so accustomed to avoid, but then we forget to have empathy for others. Engaging in dialogue is sometimes uncomfortable, but it helps teach us how to build relationships and be compassionate. And we must push to build more bridges among all people. And for those of you who are in need of conversation and dialogue, I invite you to reach out to your clergy and to the staff at the temple. We are here for all of you. And I also always invite those of you who disagreed with part or all of my sermon this evening. It is okay to engage in these conversations, and I always appreciate the feedback, and I am happy to speak to anybody about anything. I wish us all a Shabbat of strength and peace, and I hope that in the coming weeks, as we continue to gather together, we can inspire one another. Shabbat Shalom.